Hey, welcome. Okay, so if you're watching these videos and you're like, Becca, this is so overwhelming, just tell me what to buy. Like, I will buy it, just I don't know. That's totally okay. Underneath this video, I'm going to have a list, a document for you where I will kind of give my recommendations by budget. I would recommend saving up until you have at least $1,200. And I'm really speaking to people who are doing sound baths. So this is like you are at your own little station, you have your instruments in front of you, and you are leading a session for people. I'm not talking about vibrational sound therapy where you have bowls on the body. So I just want to clarify. I'm really speaking to the people who are going to be playing the instruments for an extended period of time. My main recommendation for this is if your budget is lower, if your budget is like around $1,200 to $2,000, which I know that's still a lot of money. But in this industry, the instruments get quite expensive. So that's on the lower end for buying instruments, for this stuff. So if you've got under $2,000, I would recommend, rather than getting a full set of bowls, getting like 7 or 8 bowls, I would actually recommend getting a set of 3 or 4 bowls and a gong. And then maybe allocating a little bit of funds towards smaller instruments like Koshi wind chimes, shakers, things like that. You can definitely check out Sunreed or Steve Weiss, or some other websites for those smaller instruments. I am a really big fan of that. You also need to allocate a little bit of money. If you're getting a gong, you need to get a gong stand. You'll need to get some gong mallets. And I would also allocate a little bit of money towards some nice wands or strikers for your bowls. So usually your bowls will come with some mallets, but the ones that they come with are usually not very good. And I recommend, like, it'll massively upgrade your sound if you just spend like $30 to $50 on some wands. And if you're spending $2,000 already, that $50 actually goes a long way. So again, I'm going to have a document down below that is just going to list everything out of like exactly here's what I would buy if my budget is $1,200, if my budget is $1,500, if my budget's $2,000, and I'll go up until around, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000. But I'm really speaking to the people who are very budget conscious, because I know that like just the cost of admission, just getting started can feel like a lot. So here's what I would do. Starting out, I would also just think a little bit about like, how big is the space that you're going to be playing in? Are you playing in a big like yoga studio type of place, or are you going to be playing in like a place with high ceilings, or are you going to be playing in like a house? Where are you going to be playing? Because if you're playing in like, I have a friend who plays at like churches and things like that, and it's a whole big space to fill. And so that person can really have some instruments that are thicker and bigger, to fill up that space. If you are someone who's playing in a house or a place with lower ceilings, you could definitely get away with smaller instruments. So something to think about. Are you going to be moving your instruments a lot, or are you going to be keeping them in one place? Are they going to have like a home in like a dedicated space where they live? Think about that a little bit. And then here would be my recommendation. I do recommend Sunreed. Like I said before, I'm not affiliated with them. I don't make any money from your buying from them. One of the reasons I really like them is they pride themselves on being ethically sourced, and that's something that's important to me. It might not be important to you, and that's totally fine. You absolutely can get like a cheap set of crystal quartz singing bowls on Amazon, or there's some people on Etsy selling them. Sometimes on Etsy they're good, but just the thing is there's no quality control with that stuff. And so I trust Sunreed, and that's the only brand that I feel comfortable recommending, because I've seen really low quality stuff and it just doesn't sound as good. It's not tuned as well. So that's why I recommend saving up until you have at least $1,200 so you can get the good stuff. I would recommend, if you're starting out with sound baths, frosted crystal singing bowls. If you have more of a budget, I would do the crystal clear singing bowls. And if your budget is even higher than that, then the alchemy bowls. Sunreed sells these crystal frosted bowls by sets. And I think that it's good. Okay. I think this is cool, actually.
40 hertz.
So they'll play all the notes for you. There's a third note. Okay. I think that that's going to be really nice. This might be a little bit more dissonant than I would like. Okay. So they're calling these dissonant, meaning that there's a note in here that's creating a little bit of friction. I like that personally. I think any of these are going to be good options for you. So these are providing 3 bowls for you. I think that's great. These are a great place to start if you want to get 3 bowls. And then I think the harmonic, these are the same, but the bowls are going to be here. Let's look at a set of 4. What notes are these? C, E, G, C. This is perfect. So I would get one of these sets of 3 or 4 from Sunreed. And if you're like, I don't know what notes to get, they've already picked them out for you. And I think that these are really good options. If you're buying from another place, here's the notes that I would get. I would start off with a low C, and then if you're doing 3, I would do C, E, G. I think that's a great place to start. Or you could do C, F, G. That would be good. You could do C, F, A, and that would be good. With any of those 3 options, if you want to add a 4th bowl, I would just add the high C. So that's the octave C. I talk about that in the 432 versus 440 video. So C, E, G, C, C, F, G, C, or C, F, A, C. Any of those are going to sound really good together and give you a lot of options. Or you can go with one of these sets. I like both the harmonic chord, and then I like the ones that they have in the dissonant, harmonic and dissonant therapeutic. I personally wouldn't recommend starting out with binaural. I would add that in later on because it's going to limit your options early on in the process. That's just my recommendation. If you listen to these and you love it, great. This would be my recommendation for a lower budget. If you only have enough to buy 3 or 4 bowls, that's where I would start. I would also recommend getting a gong, even if your budget is low. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, I might have already said this. I definitely recommend having a variety of instruments, especially when you're starting out. Rather than getting a full set of bowls, get a couple bowls and a gong and a couple of smaller instruments. You're going to be able to do so much more with that than you will with just 7 or 8 bowls. I think I already did say that. Anyway, gongs. So I talked to you about Steve Weiss and showed you gongs there. They also offer this on Sunreed. If you go to the classic Chow Gong or Wind Gong, these are actually the exact same prices as the ones that are on Steve Weiss. I actually am wondering if they source from Steve Weiss because I just did a cross reference, and the 30-inch Wind Gong on Steve Weiss is $499. The 32-inch is $599. So just so you know, Sunreed is what's up. And you can get everything there. So my recommendation for your very first gong is going to be a 30-inch Wind Gong. And I have a couple of reasons for that, or a 32-inch. The reason that I like Wind Gongs is that they are a little bit thinner and lighter weight. So if you do have to move this around once or twice, that's going to be okay. If you're going to be moving it around all the time, do a 28 or a 26. If you're going to be carrying it around and playing over people, do a 22 or a 24 inch. And 24 might be kind of big. You're going to have to hold it far away from you. I mean, it's 2 feet. So Yeah, 22 inch might be more comfortable with like playing and moving around, but 24 you could still do. Anyway, if this is going to live in a spot and sit on a stand, 30 inch or 32 inch is going to be great. This is like the size that we think of as like, when you look at it, it looks like a gong. The reason why I like wind gongs in particular, they have a very fast response time. So I talk about this in qualities of instruments, but basically it doesn't take a lot of effort to get them going. You can be very gentle with it and you'll get a lot of sound from it. What else? It has a lot of overtones. So we talked a little bit about chow gongs versus wind gongs. Chow gongs tend to have a little bit more of a fundamental pitch. And with that, like sometimes you might like the pitch and sometimes you might not like the pitch. Sometimes the pitch, we won't necessarily know when we buy the gong, especially if there's not a sound clip, what that fundamental pitch is going to be. It could be a surprise. So sometimes the fundamental pitch will go really well with your bowls and match and be harmonious with it, or it could create some friction and some rub. And that's okay too if it does. But just to avoid all of that, I think it's good to get a gong with more overtones because it'll just blend in a little bit more nicely and go with everything. So just playing the sound clip. I'm not hearing anything. I don't know if you can really hear. It's really soft for me, but you can listen to these sound clips and see what sounds good to you. That would be my recommendation for like a starter gong. I think that's a really great place to start. You'll also need to get a gong stand, and I know that they have them here on gong stands. This is one of those things, like if you're on a budget, if you have a small budget, you can definitely save here. Because some people really like these like beautiful, aesthetically pleasing ones, which are great. And they are beautiful, but you also can get them for a lot cheaper. Make sure that it holds the size gong that you need though. So this one, Fruity Buddha gong stand, only holds up to a size 26 inch gong. So you're going to need something, if you get the 30 or 32, you're going to need something bigger. Personally, I am not a fan of these circular ones just because they seem a little bit flimsier to me. These ones where the feet are like fully on the ground, I like more, and that's what I personally use. I'm just here on Steve Weiss to show you there's a lot of options here as well. I think this is what I have. No, I have the large one. I think I have this large one. It's $90. This is one of those things where you can buy, there are some that are like, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars, or like maybe even thousands if you're getting like handcrafted wooden gong stands, but you don't need that if you don't want it or if you're on a budget. So yeah, recommendation would be just this simple like gong rack. And if you want to make it more aesthetically pleasing, for a while I like wrapped some ivy like plants around it. Like there's things that you can do to like make it cuter. Now I like to keep it simple, but just know that like, you know, there's ways to kind of work around the aesthetic stuff too. So that's gong stand, and bowls. So that's really it for this. I'm going to provide a full list, just breaking it down by budget, but that's what I would prioritize, especially for those of you who are on a lower budget, like mixing and matching. Oh, I guess the other thing I'll say is that I would also take a look at some like chimes and bells. The any of these, Koshi chimes, Zephyr chimes, Theta chimes, any of these are going to be a really nice addition. And I want to say if you get, let's just look at it. Each one I think is $60 for this. You don't need to buy the stand if you're on a budget. Chimes are really nice. Or I would think about like maybe an ocean drum or a rain stick, just like kind of look through some of this stuff. And then also I would just check it out on Steve Weiss, like I showed you in another video, and just like cross-reference the pricing just to make sure. that you're not getting like really overcharged for something. So yeah, that's really my recommendation for starting out buying your first instruments. If you're like, what do I do? This is what I would do. I'll have a complete list for you down below. And yeah, hope that was helpful. Talk to you later.